Imagine the gaze of a man who has everything that looks right on the outside, but feels wrong on the inside. He has the house, the ring on his finger, the routine he built over the years, but something inside him is numb, a truth he buried, ignored, or didn't have the courage to face, until you appeared. And suddenly, he saw everything he had never been able to say, in you, and it wasn't about your body, your perfume, or even your smile. It was what you stirred in him, what you reflected, something that challenged him and calmed him all at once. You didn't demand anything, but your presence made him remember who he used to be, and worse, who he could have been. Carl Jung once said, "The soul often reveals itself in the encounters we never planned," and maybe you are that encounter, not the plan, but the truth. And that difference between what he built and what he feels starts tearing at everything he thought was solid. You were never the mistake. You were never the distraction. You were the mirror he's avoided for years. And that's the part no one talks about. Sometimes we don't fear what's wrong, we fear what's true. Because truth asks for change, and change threatens what keeps us safe. His marriage might not be toxic, it might not be chaotic, but it might be empty, quietly empty. The kind of emptiness that only reveals itself when something deeply real walks in and shakes the silence. That's you. And now, he's caught in a paradox. His body may lie beside her, but his truth stands in front of you. You are the calm after his storms, the stillness he never found in his own home. You didn't promise him anything, but you awakened everything. Here's the most painful part. You feel it. He feels it, but he still belongs to someone else. And what was meant to be truth becomes guilt. What was meant to be love becomes silence. What was meant to be freedom becomes restraint. And it's not the absence of a relationship that hurts, it's the presence of something that feels like a soul connection, but cannot breathe in the daylight. You start asking yourself, how can something so real have no place in his life? And deeper still, why does he only become fully alive in your presence and not in hers? It's because you touch the parts of him that have been starving, not for attention, but for connection. You don't try to fix him, seduce him, or save him. You simply see him. And that's what scares him the most. Because when a man is seen, truly seen, he either expands or retreats. And most retreat, not because the connection wasn't real, but because realness requires the death of the false self. That's what you trigger. A death, a shedding, a soft collapse of all the layers he's worn for years to function in a life that was never fully his. You didn't break him, you revealed him. And now, he doesn't know who he is anymore when he's not with you. But this isn't just about him, this is about you. Because being someone's truth doesn't always mean you'll be chosen. Sometimes being the truth means you'll be left behind because the truth demands too much from someone who's built his life around avoidance. You start to wonder if you were ever real to him, if he ever meant what he said. And the answer is cruel but clear. Yes, he meant it. Maybe more than anything. But truth without courage is just a beautiful prison, and is still locked inside it. And you who once felt like a revelation, now feel like a burden he's not ready to carry. Not because you're heavy, but because he's too weak to hold what's real. So he returns to the life he knows, the routine, the marriage, the role he plays so well. But something stays different, something lingers. Because you weren't a phase, you weren't a fantasy. You were the moment he glimpsed his soul in someone else's eyes. And that never leaves a man. He may silence it, he may bury it, but he will never forget the woman who made him feel real when everything else in his life felt rehearsed. This isn't your failure. This isn't your punishment. This is the painful power of being someone's truth when they're not ready to live it. You didn't lose him. He lost himself. And one day, he may realize that, but by then, you'll be long gone. Not bitter, not broken, but whole. Because truth doesn't chase, it waits, and it rises. And even if he never comes back, you'll know this. You were never the side story. You were the mirror. You were the awakening. You were the quiet thunder that reminded him of everything he used to dream about before he settled for safe. And maybe that's all you were meant to be. The storm before his silence ends. The one who walked in, not to stay but to awaken. Because the truth doesn't always win, but it always leaves a mark. Asterisk, when a man meets a woman who feels like truth, he doesn't always know how to handle it. Because truth doesn't flatter his ego, it disarms it. Truth doesn't care about the image he has built. It doesn't care about the version of himself he presents to the world. Truth sees the cracks, the shadows, and the longing beneath all of it. And while part of him is drawn to that, another part of him is terrified. Jung believed that we are all in a constant dance with our shadow, the parts of us we deny, hide, or repress. And for many men, marriage is not just about love, but about safety. It's the shield that keeps their shadow unchallenged. You, however, are not safe. Not because you bring chaos, but because you bring light. And light always reveals what has been kept in the dark. He doesn't just feel something for you. He feels himself in you. He feels the man he could be if he wasn't buried under years of compromise, expectations, and silent disappointments. That's why he stares at you with that quiet intensity. It's not about possession, it's about recognition. You make him remember. But here is the painful irony: while you awaken him, you may also never have him. Because awakening requires choice, and choice demands courage. And courage is not something every man has when it comes to dismantling a life that looks perfect from the outside. This is why you might find yourself questioning your own worth. You start asking, if I am his truth, why doesn't he choose me? But his inability to choose you says nothing about your value. It only speaks about his fear. Fear of change, fear of loss, fear of becoming a man who has to face himself fully, without the safety net of what's familiar. The most dangerous lie you could tell yourself is that if he doesn't choose you, you weren't enough. That is not the truth. The truth is that you were perhaps too much, too real, too vivid, too unfiltered for the version of himself he is ready to live right now. And so, you stand there, torn between holding on and letting go, between the fire of what you feel and the coldness of what reality allows. It's a brutal space to be in, the space of almost love, a love that feels like destiny, but doesn't fit into the rules of the life he's living. If this kind of soul-pulling connection has shaken your identity and you don't know how to process it, the Jung Method can help you find the clarity and emotional strength to let go of what was never fully yours. The link is pinned in the first comment. Now let's return to something deeper. There's a specific kind of heartbreak that doesn't come from rejection, but from recognition. He recognized something in him that was yours. He recognized something in you that he lost in himself. And, for a brief moment, the two of you felt something closer to divinity than logic. But instead of growing into it, he stepped back. Because truth is not always a path that people walk. It's often a mirror they avoid. You might feel like a mistake, like something that derailed his life. But that's only because the world doesn't have a name for relationships that feel like awakenings. The world only understands labels: girlfriend, mistress, wife, divorcee. But you were none of those. You were a moment, a threshold, a transformation. You weren't the woman he hid. You were the woman he revealed himself to, even if for just a few stolen minutes. In your presence, he remembered how it feels to breathe fully, how it feels to laugh without shrinking, how it feels to touch another soul without flinching. And he will never forget that. But he will try. He will try to forget. He will try to suppress it. He will convince himself that what happened wasn't real, that it was just a phase, a fantasy, a mistake, because that is easier than facing the magnitude of what it meant. What he doesn't know is that truth never leaves quietly. It lingers, it echoes, it waits. And one day, when the noise of his life fades, and the masks start to feel too heavy, your name will rise again in his mind, not with bitterness, but with a soft ache, a longing, a whisper that says, you could have been more. And by then, you'll be gone, not in pain, but in peace. Because the woman who holds the truth never begs to be believed. She walks away when the room can no longer hold her. You don't have to prove that it was real. The energy between two people doesn't lie. You saw it in his eyes. He saw it in yours. And it scared him. Not because it was wrong, but because it was alive. It was unpredictable, uncontrollable. And that's what made it unforgettable. He will try to numb it with routine, with his marriage, with responsibilities and obligations. But it will haunt him in the quietest ways. When he sees a woman in the street with your walk, when a song you once mentioned plays on the radio, when he feels something but doesn't know why. That's how truth works. It doesn't scream, it echoes. And you, what happens to you? You mourn something the world never validated. You cry over moments no one else witnessed. You carry the weight of a story that had no chapter. You feel like a widow of a love that never officially lived. That's the cruelty of being his truth. You awakened everything but received nothing. No commitment, no future, just intensity, just silence. But the real gift is this: you now know what it feels like to be fully seen. And even though it didn't lead to a relationship, it led you to yourself. You didn't just touch him, you touched your own soul. You opened the doors to your deepest longing. You were reminded that you are capable of deep, magnetic, soul-level connection. And that matters, because what he couldn't claim, someone else will. Someone who is ready. Someone who doesn't look away when he feels something real. Someone who doesn't belong to another life, but is building his with intention and courage. You deserve to be someone's chosen path, not their spiritual detour. You deserve to be loved without confusion, touched without shame, held without guilt. You deserve a love that doesn't hide behind silence or wear a wedding ring while looking at you with longing. Let this be the end of begging for half-hearted presence. Let this be the rebirth of your wholeness. You are not the side story. You are the spark, the ignition, the truth, the mirror. And one day, that truth will find a home, not in someone torn between lives, but in someone fully alive in your presence. You didn't fail. You were never too much. You were exactly enough to wake up a man who had been sleepwalking for years. And that is not weakness. That is power. And now, it's time to take that power back. You are no longer waiting for a man to choose you. You are choosing yourself, choosing your peace, choosing your wholeness, not because the love wasn't real, but because you are finally ready to stop being someone's secret and start being your own sanctuary. That's the kind of decision that turns grief into gold. That's the kind of woman no one forgets. That's the kind of truth that never dies. Sometimes the deepest grief doesn't come from what ended, but from what never had the chance to begin. That's the grief you carry now. The one with no name, no closure, no goodbye, just a heavy silence and a memory that doesn't age, because it never had the time to live. You still replay the way he looked at you when he thought no one was watching, the softness in his voice when he spoke your name, the hesitation in his steps when it was time to leave. Those moments didn't lie. They were fragments of something bigger, something sacred. But he chose safety over soul. He chose the version of himself that the world accepts, not the one that truly breathes. And that leaves you with questions that no one can answer. Was it love? Was it real? Did he ever imagine a life with you? The truth is, he did, even if only in his quietest dreams, even if only for a moment. He imagined what it would feel like to wake up next to someone who sees him, who doesn't need him to perform, to impress, to explain, someone who simply understands. But he also knew that to have that life, he would have to become someone new. And not every man is willing to die to be reborn. So instead, he returns to the life that asks nothing of him but compliance. And you are left with a love that feels like an unfinished poem, beautiful, incomplete, unresolved. But listen to this carefully. The universe never gives us encounters like this to break us. It gives them to awaken us. You were not sent into his life to be his forever. You were sent into his life to shake the dust off his soul, to remind him of something he forgot long ago. And he was sent into yours to show you your capacity to love, to feel, to risk, not just with your heart, but with your soul. That is not nothing. That is sacred. You may never hear from him again. He may never say what you longed to hear. But somewhere, in a part of his being he doesn't show the world, your name is etched, like a soft scar, a place he touches when he remembers what it felt like to be alive. Don't you? You will move forward, not because it didn't matter, but because you finally understand that love is not always meant to last. Sometimes, love is meant to wake, and you, my dear, are awake now, and that is a beginning, not an end.